ever since the shroud first really appears in history, there's been controversy about it, and there have been questions about its authenticity.
A team of scientists recently did something no one expected. They fed the visual data from the Shroud of Turin into a neural network originally designed to analyze deep space signals. The goal was simple: confirm that the shroud was a medieval forgery. But that's not what happened. Instead, the system halted and flagged a massive anomaly. It detected a mathematically precise projection of a human body, one that doesn't behave according to gravity. This suddenly wasn't just a religious debate. It became a question of physics. The data suggests the figure in the shroud didn't simply die. It vanished. And the most unsettling part? This evidence may have been in front of us for nearly 2,000 years, a kind of digital ghost hidden in plain sight. For decades, the story seemed settled. The 14-foot-long cloth was dismissed as a medieval hoax, a clever artwork created to deceive a superstitious world. Case closed. Or so it seemed. When the AI examined the chaotic weave of the linen fibers, it stopped cold. Beneath the faint, haunting image of the man, it detected a hidden signal, a repeating mathematical symmetry. This isn't something a medieval artist could have produced intentionally or accidentally. In simple terms, the system uncovered a digital imprint locked inside the threads themselves. To understand why this is such a breakthrough, you have to look closely at the image. It's astonishingly shallow. The discoloration exists only on the outermost surface of the linen fibers, just a few hundred nanometers deep. For comparison, a single human hair is about 80,000 nanometers thick. This image is thinner than a soap bubble. The color doesn't soak into the fabric the way paint, dye, or ink would. If you cut a thread in half, the inside remains completely white. The image sits on the surface like a scorch mark, not a stain. There are no brush strokes, no pigments, no signs of an artist's hand. Just an image that shouldn't exist, and data that refuses to be ignored. There's no sense of direction in the image at all. It's as if the linen fibers themselves were chemically changed by an intense, instantaneous burst of energy. When the AI examined it, it didn't see artwork, it saw raw data. The neural network filtered out the visual noise and focused on the underlying structure. What appeared wasn't a picture, but an information field. The light and dark areas followed a precise, predictable rule, almost like a law of physics tied to distance. Picture a cloth resting over a human body. If you were painting that scene, you'd rely on shading to create the illusion of depth. But the shroud doesn't use shading. The AI confirmed something far stranger. The darkness of the image perfectly matches how close the cloth was to the body. Where the fabric touched the skin, the image is darker. Where it hovered farther away, the image fades. It forms a flawless mathematical map of distance. And it gets even stranger. The AI uncovered faint, repeating symmetries and ratios throughout the body, patterns invisible to the human eye for centuries, buried deep in the visual chaos of the fabric's weave. But the machine detected them instantly. This strongly suggests the image wasn't created by a human hand pressing pigment onto cloth. For a medieval forger to pull this off, they would have needed to be a physicist, a mathematician, and a nanotechnology expert. Centuries before any of those fields existed. They would have had to paint using invisible geometry. In the end, the AI reached a startling conclusion. The image behaves less like a drawing and more like a projection. A precise map hidden inside what looks like a scorch mark. So here's why this AI discovery is unsettling so many people. To really understand it, we have to look at what came long before modern computers, because the shroud has always been filled with details that simply don't make sense. Let's rewind to 1898. A lawyer named Secondo Pia takes the very first photograph of the shroud. Alone in his darkroom, he develops the glass plate. When the image appears, he nearly drops it. On the photographic negative, the faint, blurry figure on the cloth suddenly becomes a sharp, lifelike positive image. In other words, the image on the shroud was already a photographic negative, centuries before photography even existed. That single fact should give anyone pause. How do you paint a negative when the idea of a photographic negative hasn't been invented yet? A medieval artist paints what they see. They don't invert light and shadow so that 500 years later, a camera can reveal the real image. And that was only the beginning. Fast forward to the 1970s. A group of scientists from the US Air Force Academy decided to test the shroud in an unexpected way. They ran a photograph of it through a VP8 image analyzer. This wasn't some experimental gadget. It was the same kind of equipment NASA used to map the surface of the Moon and Mars. The VP8 converts brightness into height. When you feed a normal photograph of a human face into a VP8, the result is chaos. The nose collapses inward, the eyes bulge outward. Everything looks warped because shadows in ordinary photos don't represent real depth. But when the shroud image was processed, something incredible happened. The image didn't distort at all. Instead, it produced a perfectly proportioned three-dimensional relief of a human body. The scientists were stunned. The image clearly contained accurate 3D information. Darker areas aligned with parts of the body that were closer to the cloth. Lighter areas matched parts that were farther away. This is where artificial intelligence re-enters the story. The AI didn't just confirm the VP8 findings, it sharpened them. The neural network filtered out the visual noise caused by the linen weave and the burn marks from past fires. What remained was a topographic map of a human body that is anatomically precise. And here's where it gets even stranger. The data suggests the body didn't rest inside the cloth. It passed through it. Let me explain. The image matches a concept known as volumetric projection. It's as if the body emitted energy for a fraction of a second, and that energy traveled straight through the linen, leaving behind a surface-level mark that recorded distance. The AI found that this mark is uniform. It doesn't soak into the fibers. It rests only on the outer surface. Even more unsettling, the analysis suggests whatever created the image traveled in straight lines, completely unaffected by gravity. Then the AI examined the bloodstains. And this is the part that stops people cold. The blood isn't paint. It's real human blood, type A. But here's the key detail. The blood was already on the cloth before the image formed. The AI detected no image beneath the bloodstains. That means the blood soaked into the fabric first, and only afterward did the event that created the image occur. If this were a painting, the artist would have had to apply the blood first, then somehow paint a perfect negative image around it without touching it or overlapping it. From a technical standpoint, that simply isn't possible. The timeline is broken. At this point, the AI has effectively taken the painting theory and thrown it out completely. It simply doesn't match the data. What we're looking at behaves less like artwork and more like a piece of photographic film, one that was exposed to a form of radiation we rarely, if ever, see in nature. For many people, the mystery was supposed to be over in 1988. That was the year science allegedly delivered the final blow. 3 independent laboratories performed radiocarbon dating on a sample from the shroud and declared it a medieval object. Case closed. Except it wasn't. Almost immediately, serious problems emerged. The sample itself was deeply flawed. To avoid damaging the cloth, officials cut a small piece from a single corner of the shroud. But that corner had endured centuries of handling. The cloth was often lifted and displayed by its edges. Thousands of hands touched it there. More importantly, the shroud survived a devastating fire in 1532. Afterward, nuns repaired the damaged sections using a technique known as invisible reweaving. Years later, a chemist named Raymond Rogers discovered something critical. Fibers taken from that corner were chemically different from the rest of the cloth. They weren't pure linen. They were cotton woven into linen and dyed to blend in. In other words, the labs didn't date the shroud itself. They dated a medieval repair. That's like trying to determine the age of the Great Pyramid by testing a modern brick used to fix a step. Of course, the result would come back modern. More recently, new technologies have changed the conversation. Scientists used wide-angle X-ray scattering to examine how the flax cellulose in the linen has degraded over time. This method looks at atomic-level breakdown, not surface contamination. The results were stunning. The degree of decay matches fabrics discovered at Masada in Israel, dated to around 55 AD. Another independent study using vibrational spectroscopy reached the same conclusion. The linen is roughly 2,000 years old. The AI adds yet another layer. It cross-referenced the shroud with the Sudarium of Oviedo, a separate face cloth preserved in Spain, documented as early as the 7th century. The AI found that the bloodstains on both cloths match precisely in shape and blood type. If the Sudarium predates the Middle Ages, then the shroud must as well. At this point, the forgery theory collapses under its own weight. It would require a medieval artist who was also a time traveler, armed with advanced physics knowledge and laser-level technology. Which brings us to the real issue, the physics of dematerialization. The AI ignored centuries of arguments, political debates, and disputed timelines. It focused only on the cloth itself. And when you look at the raw data, the conclusion is unsettling. This object does not behave like a fake painting. It behaves like something that was exposed to an immense, instantaneous burst of energy. And that leads to a final, deeply unsettling question. The puzzle is simple, but shocking. If this isn't a painting, then something extraordinary must have happened. Something that transformed a solid human body into an intense burst of light. And when matter turns into light, we're no longer talking about art. Paints and dyes are already off the table. No liquid ever soaked into the threads. Acids and scorching are ruled out as well because they would have destroyed the linen's plant fibers. So what's left? That's the heart of the mystery. How do you create a perfectly accurate three-dimensional image on a linen cloth without damaging it at all? Right now, the most plausible scientific explanation involves a rare, invisible form of light, ultraviolet radiation. Researchers in Italy discovered that a very specific type of UV light can alter linen fibers in exactly the same way seen on the shroud. It changes the color only on the outermost surface of each thread, without burning or penetrating deeper. But here's the problem, and it's a massive one. To produce an image like this on a full-sized human form, a simple UV lamp wouldn't even come close. You would need an energy burst equivalent to about 34 trillion watts. To put that into perspective, that's more power than any searchlight on Earth and far beyond the lasers used in modern industry. And it wouldn't last long, less than 40 billionths of a second. It would also have to occur without generating heat. In effect, it would resemble a nuclear scale event, but made entirely of light instead of fire. If the flash lasted even slightly longer, the cloth would have been incinerated. If it were even a little weaker, no image would have formed at all. And that's what makes this so unsettling. Whatever created the image had to be impossibly precise, powerful enough to change matter, yet gentle enough to leave the cloth intact. The conditions required for this event are so precise that they border on the impossible. Everything had to happen perfectly, no margin for error, no room for randomness. And that leads to the most radical conclusion supported by the AI's analysis. The body wrapped inside the shroud didn't simply decay. It dematerialized. Some modern physicists have proposed a concept known as collapsed state theory to describe something like this. According to the idea, the body may have undergone a localized transformation in which its physical mass was converted directly into energy. Einstein's famous equation, E equals mc squared, tells us that even an unimaginably tiny amount of mass contains an enormous amount of energy. If the atoms within a human body were to suddenly destabilize or transition into another state, the result would be an intense burst of radiation, far beyond anything we normally encounter. What makes this even stranger is how that energy behaved. The AI detected no evidence of an outward explosion. There was no spherical blast pattern, no chaotic dispersion like you'd expect from a violent release. Instead, the data suggests the radiation moved in perfectly straight lines, upward and downward, aligned perpendicular to gravity. That implies a highly controlled, tightly collimated event. Almost like a vertical beam rather than a blast. A linear projection of matter and energy interacting with the cloth for a fraction of a second. Think of it as an event horizon, not of space, but of biology. The body reached a critical threshold and underwent what looks like a phase shift, transitioning out of its physical state entirely. One of the most telling details is what the AI did not find. There are absolutely no signs of putrefaction. In normal forensic cases, decomposition begins within roughly 40 hours. Tissues break down, caustic fluids and gases are released, ammonia forms. These processes would have soaked into the cloth, distorted the image, and chemically damaged the fibers. None of that is present on the shroud. This creates an incredibly narrow time window. The body remained wrapped in the linen long enough for bloodstains to form and for the image to be transferred, but it disappeared before decomposition could even begin. Whatever happened, happened fast. And then there are the bloodstains. This may be the most haunting detail of all. The body did not stand up and walk away. If the linen had been unwrapped, or if a physical body had been dragged out, the blood would have smeared. Clots would have torn. Fibers would have been ripped. But the stains are clean, intact, and undisturbed. It's as if the body vanished through the cloth, not away from it. So here we arrive at the final, controversial question, one that refuses to go away. Did artificial intelligence uncover evidence of an event that defies the known laws of physics? Something truly extraordinary? Or is this the most elaborate, ingenious deception in human history? So advanced, so precise, that even modern science still can't explain how it was done? Or maybe there's a third possibility. Maybe we're only beginning to glimpse a layer of reality we don't yet understand. What do you think happened? Share your theory in the comments below. And if you want to keep exploring the unknown with us, make sure to like the video and subscribe for more stories that challenge everything we think we know.